Ramona and her father, and we are in the middle of chapter 3, The Night of the Jack-o'-lantern. Ramona could tell by the sound of her father's voice that he was smiling. She ran off to her room without thinking up excuses for staying up just 5 minutes longer, added a postscript, that means a little addition, to her prayers, thanking God for the big pumpkin, and another asking him to find her father a job. And she fell asleep at once, not bothering to tuck her panda bear in beside her for comfort. Why do you think she didn't need her panda bear tonight? Is it because maybe she's feeling things are good? Because they had a fun time together? I'm not sure. In the middle of the night, Ramona found herself suddenly awake without knowing why she was awake. Tense, she listened hard. There it was, sort of a thumping, scuffling noise. Not very loud, but it was there just the same. And then silence. And then she heard it again. Inside of the house, in the kitchen. Something was in the kitchen and it was moving. Ramona's mouth was so dry, she could barely whisper, "Daddy!" But no answer. More thumping. Someone bumped against a wall. Someone or something was going to get them. Ramona thought about the leering, sneering face on the kitchen table, and all the ghost stories that she had ever heard and all the scary pictures she'd ever seen raced through her mind. Could the jack-o'-lantern come to life? Of course not. It was only a pumpkin. But still, a bodiless, leering head was too horrifying to think about. Ramona sat up in bed and shrieked, "Daddy!" A light came on in her parents' room. Feet thumped on the floor. Ramona's tousled father in rumpled pajamas was silhouetted. That means you can just see him like a black outline of himself because it was dark. Silhouetted in Ramona's doorway, followed by her mother tugging a robe on over her nightgown. "What is it, baby?" asked Mr. Quimby. Both of Ramona's parents called her baby when they were worried about her. And tonight Ramona was so relieved to see them that she didn't even mind. "Was it a bad dream?" asked Mrs. Quimby. There's something in the kitchen. Ramona's voice quivered. Beezus, only half awake, joined the family. "What's happening? What's going on?" she asked. "There's something in the kitchen," said Ramona, feeling braver. Something's moving." "Shh," commanded Mr. Quimby. Tense, the family listened to the silence. "You just had a bad dream." Mrs. Quimby came into the room, kissed Ramona, and started to tuck her in. Ramona pushed away the blanket. "It was not a bad dream," she insisted. "I did too hear something spooky." "Well, all we have to do is look," said Mr. Quimby, reasonably and bravely, Ramona thought. Nobody would get her into that kitchen. Ramona waited, scarcely breathing, fearing for her father's safety as he walked down the hall and flipped on the kitchen light. No shout, no yell came from that part of the house. Instead, her father laughed. And Ramona felt brave enough to follow the rest of the family to see what was so funny. There was a really strong smell of cat food in the kitchen. And what Ramona saw and what Beezus saw did not strike them as one bit funny. What do you think happened? Their jack-o'-lantern. The jack-o'-lantern their father had worked so hard to carve no longer had a whole face. Part of its forehead, one ferocious eyebrow, one eye, and part of its nose were gone, replaced by a jagged hole with little tiny teeth marks. What do you think happened, boys and girls? And Picky was crouched in guilt under the kitchen table. The nerve of that cat! Bad cat! Bad cat! Shrieked Ramona, stamping her bare foot on the cold linoleum. The old yellow cat fled to the dining room, where he crouched under the table, his eyes glittering in the darkness. Mrs. Quimby laughed, a small, rueful laugh. I knew he liked cantaloupe, but I had no idea he liked pumpkin too. And with a butcher knife she began to cut up the remains of the jack-o'-lantern, carefully removing, Ramona noticed, the parts with the teeth marks. Why do you think Picky started eating the pumpkin? Was it because he didn't like his cat food? I wonder. I told you he wouldn't eat that awful puss putty. Beezus was accusing her father of denying their cat. Course he had to eat the jack-o'-lantern. He's starving. Beezus, dear, said Mrs. Quimby, we simply cannot afford the brand of food Picky used to eat. Now be reasonable. Beezus was in no mood to be reasonable. Then how come Daddy can afford to smoke? Ramona was astonished to hear her sister speak this way to their mother. Mr. Quimby looked angry. Young lady, he said. And when he called Beezus young lady, Ramona knew her sister had better watch out. Young lady, I've heard enough about that old tomcat and about his food, and my smoking is none of your business. Ramona expected Beezus to say she was sorry, or maybe burst into tears and run to her room. But instead, she pulled Picky out from under the table and she held him to her chest as if she were shielding him from danger. It is to my business, she informed her father. Cigarettes can kill you. Your lungs will turn black and you'll die. We made posters about it at school. And besides, cigarettes pollute the air. Ramona was horrified at her sister's daring, and at the same time she was a teeny bit pleased. Beezus was usually so well behaved, while Ramona was the one who had tantrums. Then she was struck by the meaning of her sister's angry words, and she was frightened. That's enough out of you, Mr. Quimby told Beezus. And let me remind you that if you had shut the cat in the basement like you were supposed to, this never would have happened. Mrs. Quimby quietly stowed the remains of the jack-o'-lantern in a plastic bag and put it in the refrigerator. Beezus opened the basement door and gently set Picky on the top step. Nighty-night, she said tenderly. Young lady, began Mr. Quimby. Young lady. Now Beezus was really gonna get it. You are getting altogether too big for your britches lately. Just be careful how you talk around this house. Boys and girls, have you ever heard that expression? Too big for your britches. It's kind of like an old-fashioned expression. Britches means pants. So you're getting too big for your pants? What does that mean? I think what it means is you're becoming a little bit mouthy. You're talking back to your parents. So Mr. Quimby is saying, you're being mouthy, you're talking back to me, you're becoming too big for your britches. But how many of you think that Beezus has a good point? She is worried about her father smoking. She is worried about how much cigarettes cost. She is worried that her father's lungs will turn black. I think those are genuine concerns, right? But I think maybe Beezus just was not being respectful when she talked to her father about it. Maybe it was how she said it, not so much what she said. Have you ever had a situation like that where it wasn't what you said, but it was how you said it? Yeah, I think that's happening here. Still, Beezus did not say she was sorry, and she did not burst into tears. She simply stalked off to her room. Ramona was the one who burst into tears. She didn't mind when she and Beezus quarreled. That means fights. She even enjoyed a good fight now and then to clear the air, but she could not bear it when anybody else in their family quarreled. And those awful things Beezus said, were they true? Don't cry, Ramona. Mrs. Quimby put her arm around her younger daughter. We'll get another pumpkin. But it won't be as big, sobbed Ramona, who wasn't really crying about the pumpkin at all. She was crying about all the important things, like her father being cross so much now that he wasn't working, and his lungs being black, and Beezus being so disagreeable when before she used to be so polite. Come on, let's all go to bed and things will look better in the morning, said Mrs. Quimby. In a few minutes, Mr. Quimby picked up a few packages of cigarettes that he had left on the kitchen table, and he took one out and he lit it, and he sat still, and he still looked angry. Were his lungs turning black this very minute? Ramona wondered. How would anybody know when his lungs were inside of him? She let her mother guide her to her room and tuck her back into bed. I'm noticing that this time in bed, Ramona is holding really tightly to her panda bear. Do you have a stuffy that you hold on to really tight when you're feeling upset on the inside? We'll continue again tomorrow.